Hey guys, welcome back to my yearly top games of the previous year, in this case 2020. As usual, I'm late to the party. As some of you guys know, this is a typical occurrence every year on my channel. I typically buy the latest new games at the end of the year during Black Friday or holiday sales. And therefore, I give myself the first 6 months of the following year to play as many quote-unquote new releases. And this time we're at the end of May, so figured I'll do my video for 2020. And as usual, my typical disclaimer of every year. Obviously, I haven't played every major game released during 2020, so don't freak out if your favorite game is not listed here. But without further ado, I'm gonna get started, and I'm gonna do a top 15 this year, since I feel like I played and completed enough 2020 games out there to give you guys a little bit of an extra bonus content. And stick around at the end of the video, because I'm gonna point out, I think, two things that I thought were very interesting. So let's get started to avoid having a super long video with my number 15 game of 2020. And that game is Tell Me Why. I played this through the Xbox Game Pass service. It's a Donut game. I really like Donut as a developer. They have some pretty cool games going all the way back to Remember Me during the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era. I do have to say that Tell Me Why is probably their weakest adventure type of game. This is kind of like a telltale game where you where you make decisions and choices, and that affects the flow of the game. And I didn't really care too much about the story and the characters this time around as I did with, for example, the Life is Strange games. I still have to play the second one, but overall it was an okay game, just not on the same level of quality, in my opinion, that other Donut games were out there. So Tell Me Why gets that very last spot at number 15. Nevertheless, it was a good game, and through Game Pass, why not try it for quote unquote for free. At number 14, a pleasant surprise in terms of arcade racing games, and that game is Hotshot Racing. And homage to older like Sega racing games, arcade games such as Virtual Racing or Daytona USA, in terms of the graphical style. But this game brings a lot of modern features. Performance is great. The frame rate, the colors in the game are beautiful. But the game does respect that kind of like blocky, pixel, not pixel, but 3D models from the Virtual Racing arcade era, which I thought it was pretty good. And the game has a pretty nice drifting mechanic that I thought was very fun. So Hotshot Racing, a pleasant surprise. It was a very fun arcade racing game. Also played this through Xbox One via Game Pass. At number 13, I have a tie, and I guess it's a top 16 games because I have 2 games in this slot. So hey, my list, my rules, right? So I have 2 games here tied with, because I think they're kind of similar in a way, in the sense that are online competitive games, and those games are none other than Fall Guys. I played this on the PlayStation 4, and Outcasters on Google Stadia. So Fall Guys, it was a really fun game. It was a free PlayStation Plus game when it first came out. So I had a ton of fun during the first few days, or maybe the first week or 2 that I played this game. I haven't gone back since, but the amount of hours that I put in this game, which are not a lot, I had a ton of fun. And similarly, we have Outcasters, which was a free game for Stadia Pro members. And I had a ton of fun. I did a couple live streams of that game, hopefully, and I think some of you guys joined and kind of looked at the game. They're different games. Fall Guys is more like a competition of mini games, where Outcasters leans a little bit more towards like a shooting game. A little bit different in that sense, but in the end, they're both online competitive games with people. And I thought they were similar enough to lump them into one spot. So at number 13, we have a tie with Fall Guys and Outcasters. They're both fun games, easy to pick up and play, but very hard to master if you want to come up on top. At number 12, we have the comeback of a series that was long missed by beat 'em ups fans out there, and that game is Streets of Rage 4. I played this also through Xbox through the Game Pass service. It was a day one release, so I was very pleasantly surprised. And Streets of Rage 4, stays true to the roots of the Streets of Rage, original trilogy released in the Sega Genesis. A very fun beat 'em up. To the point that the mechanics and controls are very old school, something that irked me a little bit. But in terms of graphics and sound, this game is fantastic. It was a great deal of fun playing this. You can play online, and that's what I did. I did an online co-op with Leo the Funny Nerd. We had a ton of fun. It's a fairly short game, but it does encourage a lot of replay value to unlock more skins and characters and whatnot. So Streets of Rage 4, definitely a fun time. And a very well done remake, or not a remake, but a very well done revival of an old series out there. At number 11, yet another Xbox One game. This game is a multi-platform game. It was actually released in 2019 for the Nintendo Switch, but saw a 2020 release for all the other systems, and hence why I'm including it here. So at number 11, we have New Super Lucky Stale, a 3D platformer that I've been meaning to play for a while. And it wasn't until thanks to my, I guess, 9-year-old niece, she came here and we were looking to play, kids games or younger audience games on Game Pass. And we randomly picked, New Super Lucky Stale, and we both loved it. She was hooked into the game. So I probably beat around half the game with her. We would pass the controller around and whatnot, and then I took over the second half of the game where it was a little bit harder, the platforming and whatnot. I was pleasantly surprised. I'm gonna do an impressions video on this because I just beat the game literally earlier today. So very pleasantly surprised by this game. A wonderful 3D platformer, very colorful, very fun, very well put together, and it's a shorter platformer that I think should be worth a try if you guys have or enjoy platformers out there. So now we're getting into the top 10, and we're gonna start the top 10 list by with a scary zombie game, and that game is Zombie Army 4: Dead War. This was a Stadia Pro game sometime last year, and I had a ton of fun in this game, playing not only the single player but also the online multiplayer, where you can play co-op. Or you can play wave mode, horde mode, where you have waves of enemies coming at you. Very hectic but very fun. This game is fantastic. It runs great on Stadia. Top performance, 60 frames per second, 4K graphics and everything. So I had a lot of fun, and I'm glad this game. I believe I believe right now it's a PlayStation Plus game out there. So I wouldn't mind replaying this again because I had so much fun playing this on Stadia. So you guys let me know if you're down for a co-op, campaign or something. Very fun game. Had a lot of fun. I played this during Halloween of 2020. So very fun game that I highly recommend it if you guys are into zombie games. Let's see. At number 9, we have a kind of like a sleeper hit for me. I've heard a lot of recommendations for this game in the indie scene out there, people that enjoy quirky games, and that game is Paradise Killer. This game, I played this through PC via Steam, but it's also available on the Nintendo Switch, and I think that's it. The game may get released later on for other consoles and systems. But let me just say that if you guys enjoy the Grasshopper Manufacturer / Suda51 quirkiness and cheesiness, this game will fit right in. When I was playing this, I thought it was a Grasshopper Manufacturer game, from the visuals to the sound effects to just the overall weirdness of the game. This was definitely heavily inspired by the Suda51, I guess, style of developing games. So that was a pleasant surprise. But the game itself is actually really good. It's about being a detective on this island where you have to interrogate and try to figure it out, this murder mystery. That was very fun. I do want to go back to the game before I make an impressions video because I want to unlock every case possible in the game, but rest assured I'm going to make an impressions video because I really want to put the word out there for these kind of like indie, a little bit obscure games that are out there. So Paradise Killer was definitely a fun one, worth a shot in my opinion. On number 8, I have a game that it was probably my most 2020 played game in terms of gameplay time, I believe. And that game is Melbourne Idol, a game that I already talked a little bit about on my first digital pickups video. I had a ton of fun with this game. It's basically RuneScape Lite. It's RuneScape without the gameplay of actually combat and everything like that. It's more the micromanaging of resources and, you know, crafting weapons, the alchemy, you know, crafting new armor, you know, just going to dungeons and things like that, managing your inventory. Very addicting game. It may not sound, or it may not seem like a fun game, but trust me, you know, I was addicted to this game. Thankfully, I kind of broke away from that addiction. But the cool thing is, this is an idle game, which means the game can play while you're not actually playing the game. You know, you can just run the game in the background, or come back a couple hours later, check your inventory, and you're gaining resources. I think I'm gonna do an impressions video. But this is a great game. It's a free game. You can play it on Android. You can play it on your desktop. But there's a paid Steam version, which is the one that I got to support the developers. Very fun, very addicting title. So yeah, make sure you guys check out Melbourne Idol if you guys are fans of RuneScape, especially because it's a free game. At number 7, a game that I know a lot of people criticize this, but you know, I knew what I was getting into. I hate doing this. I have not beaten the game yet. So far, you know, every game that I talked about, you know, I completed the games. I hate doing this, but I really wanted to get my video out. But, you know, don't worry, guys. I know I'm going to beat this. I know what to expect. I already started playing it, obviously, and that game is Resident Evil 3 on the PlayStation 4. I'm a huge fan of the original Resident Evil 3 game, so I knew exactly what I was getting into in terms of the complaints, that this game is extremely short. So, you know, I knew that beforehand, and on top of that, you know, I bought this during Black Friday for like $15. So even if the game is super short, you know, I'm gonna get my money's worth out of it, because this game does encourage multiple playthroughs. You know, you keep unlocking new weapons, you know, things like infinite ammo and things like that make the game a little bit more fun and relaxing, you know, the more you play it. So Resident Evil 3, fantastic game featuring one of my favorite villains of all time, if not my favorite villain, which is Nemesis, which, you know, he was not portrayed as good as he could have been, in my opinion, but nevertheless, I think it's a fun game, and you know, so far from what I've been playing, it's a great game with fantastic graphics. So pretty happy to put Resident Evil 3 there at number 7. At number 6, we have a game that I have not completed yet. I'm pretty far into the game. This is the second game that I have not completed, and I hate doing this, but Final Fantasy VII Remake. I've been highly anticipating this game because I've never completed a proper Final Fantasy or a mainline Final Fantasy game. I have a couple of the spin-off games under my belt, but, you know, I do want to complete a Final Fantasy game, and, you know, this game was offered for free as part of PlayStation Plus. So might as well, you know, play this one and see if I can include it on my 2020 list. And sure enough, it made its way to number 6, which it may be surprising. I know a lot of people rank this game pretty high on their lists, but you know, I'm enjoying the game. There's nothing wrong with the game. I really enjoy the action-based combat system. I love the graphics. The character models are great. You know, Tifa especially. You know, she's a hottie, but. Yeah, the graphics are great. The story is pretty good, even though the game is not full-fledged. You know, it's kind of like, it's going to be divided into 2 or 3 or more games, depending on what Square Enix decides. But definitely looking forward to completing this game, and obviously looking forward to the future releases. I've never completed the original Final Fantasy VII, so this has given me a taste of of what the game is actually like. And so far, I'm enjoying it. Very nice characters, gameplay, and you know, a storyline so far. At number 5, a game that I do have an impressions video that I really enjoyed. If you guys are into turn-based strategy games, this game is XCOM Chimera Squad. This is available, I believe, only on Steam or PC. Yeah, I had a ton of fun in this game, as I mentioned on my impressions video. It's kind of like an XCOM light game. It's not as hardcore as kind of like the mainline games like XCOM Enemy Unknown, for example. Those games are a little bit more in depth. But you know, that's perfect. You know, Chimera Squad, even though it's a light version of the game, it never stops being a challenging game. There's a lot of things that you have to micromanage within the game. Very fun to level up your characters, discovering new skills, and I really enjoyed the art style and the comic book type of presentation that the game had. So a great job by Fire Access, in my opinion. The developers, they did a great job in offering a fun, to the point XCOM game that, in my opinion, it's somewhat of a good stepping stone if you guys are a little bit overwhelmed by the main games. I think Chimera Squad is definitely a good place to start. And on top of that, it has a budget pricing, so definitely a good game to get into the XCOM series. And now we have at number 4 a game that I was very pleasantly surprised. It's a PlayStation 5 game. You know, I just recently got a PlayStation 5 game, and I only have one PlayStation 5 game, and that game is this one, Astros Playroom. Absolutely love this game. It may look or sound like just your run-of-the-mill, you know, tech demo, pack-in type of game with the console, but Astros Playroom is a fantastic game. Absolutely loved it. The graphics are pretty good. You know, they're not gonna blow your mind or anything, but the actual I think impressive part of the game is definitely the PlayStation 5 DualSense controller. That is the next gen feature of this game. I do plan on doing an impressions video on this, where I'm gonna gush about, I'm just gonna talk about this game in a very positive manner, because it really is a good solid 3D platforming game with a lot of good redeeming things in terms of the control and the technology that the PlayStation 5 has in store. So Astros Playroom, no surprises, making it into my top 5 at number 4. And now we're getting into the top 3, guys. These are the top of the topper most games for 2020. At number 3, I have Immortals Phoenix Rising, a game that I do have an impressions video. And as you guys know, I talked very positively about this game. I'm a huge fan of the Legend of Zelda games, and Breath of the Wild, obviously, it's in my opinion, one of the best Zelda games out there, and one of the best games this generation. And I think Immortals Phoenix Rising does a good job of taking some elements from that game, combining with other elements from the Assassin's Creed games. After all, I believe the same developing team that did some of the Assassin's Creed game, part of that team worked on Phoenix Rising. So that alone tells you about the influence of that open world Ubisoft, type of, lots of side missions, lots of collectibles. I don't mind those types of games. I actually like the open world Ubisoft type of games that, for whatever reason, people seem to hate. And Phoenix Rising does a really good job of incorporating things from Breath of the Wild, kind of like the stamina, the exploration. And on top of that, I think the game has a pretty likable characters and storyline, and makes up for a great adventure game that, it pleasantly surprised me, and hence why I decided to put Phoenix Rising at number 3. Don't sleep on it if you guys haven't played it. It's a really fun game. Highly recommend it. At number 2, this was tough. I thought it was going to be a number 1, but there were some things that bothered me a little bit. But in the end, I decided to go with number 2 for none other than Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I do have an impressions video. I beat this game not too long ago. Absolutely love this game. You gotta love Ori. This game is fantastic. Moon Studios, once again, they created a masterpiece in terms of a Metroidvania type of game. You guys can check my in-depth thoughts on this game on my impressions video, but simply put, this is one of my favorite Metroidvania games out there. The game is just beautiful to look at. There are a lot of new features compared to the first Ori game that make this sequel a very interesting one. There are a couple of annoyances as well that I did mention on my impressions video that kind of took some hits and brought it down from my number 1 spot to number 2. But a very respectable position for this game. Ori ending up at number 2. play this on the Xbox Series S, with some, updated performance that, this game will look beautiful, 4K, 60 frames per second. Highly recommended. If you guys are into Metroidvania games, this is your game right here. Make sure you try the Ori games because they're fantastic. And at number one, maybe some of you guys will already have an idea of what that game is. I also have an impressions video where I talk very positively about The Last of Us Part 2. A very controversial game for a lot of people, not for me. I didn't really see a whole lot of controversy in this game. I'm not going to spoil anything, obviously. You guys can go and watch my impressions video, where the last part of that impressions video I do talk about the story, and that discussion has spoilers. So if you want to hear my extended thoughts on this game, go make sure you go and check out that video. But simply put, The Last of Us Part 2 is a fantastic game. Graphically, man, the PS4 just did a beautiful job. I did play this on the PlayStation 5, which ups the performance a little bit. So the game looked fantastic. The character models, Naughty Dog, they're the masters of pushing every ounce of horsepower in these consoles. And The Last of Us is a beautiful game with a beautiful soundtrack, great voice acting, great character models, and the story is just very interesting. You want to know what's going on. You have the two characters playing, which is something that the two storylines that you flip back and forth, in the game, which is just great. And I enjoyed this game thoroughly, despite all the controversy, despite all the criticisms. I think The Last of Us Part 2 is truly, with a reason. This game got so many awards, and it's because it's just a fantastic AAA type of game. So that's it, guys. That's my top 15. I do want to point out two things that really surprised me. Number one, no Nintendo first-party games on my list. And that has to do, I think, with the weak 2020 year. Personally, I think that Nintendo had. I was a huge fan of Animal Crossing on the 3DS, but for whatever reason, I didn't feel like buying the new one on the Switch. So I do understand that that's kind of like their major 2020 release. But other than that, the new Pokemon game didn't really grab my attention. I'll probably get it down the road. And a couple of other good releases, but I didn't really play anything Nintendo-wise for 2020, which is very odd in my channel. I typically have first-party Nintendo games, obviously, because they're great. The only first-party Nintendo game that I can think of that I played was Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity, and I only briefly played it for like maybe 2 or 3 hours, and I didn't care for it too much, which is kind of weird because I'm a huge fan of the original Hyrule Warriors on the Wii U, and that game was really fun. So I need to go back to Age of Calamity and see if I can enjoy that game a little bit more. But that was the number one surprising thing. And number two, as you guys can see here, we have 1, 2, 3 physical games. The rest of the games were all digital, with 3 games actually being, let's see, 3 games being streamed, through Stadia. So that kind of, goes into what I've been talking about in my channel, that I'm more and more shifting to, digital games. I don't know why that, I struggled there for a second. More and more digital games in lieu of physical games. As you guys can see here, I'm running out of room. I don't have a whole lot of room, and the convenience of digital games just, it's very strong and just doing a whole lot of good things for me as of late. So I thought that was interesting. In previous years, you would see a stack of games, top 10, top 15, top 20. They were all, physical games. But as the years are moving forward, I'm leaning towards more digital games, so I thought that was interesting. But other than that, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of my list. Make sure you share yours if you want to in the comment section. So once again, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all later. Take it easy.